guys, happy Monday to everybody. So today's video is not going to be a beauty related video. This is a video that I've been meaning to record for about 2 years now. This is going to be my labor and delivery story, and the reason that I'm doing it now is that I need to get all of these thoughts out just because I haven't written them down. I'm not someone that's very good at writing. I'm okay at it when I need to be, but it's just not something that I make a whole lot of time for. So I want to get these thoughts out, mostly because I want to have this video for Stella to be able to see someday and to get a good laugh at. And before I get started, I really enjoyed watching these videos when I was pregnant with Stella because I didn't really know what to expect. Stella is my first and my only child. I don't plan on having more children. So I just, I watched a bunch of these like birth type videos and just to see, what types of experiences people had. And so with my experience, it's just my experience. They all tend to be so different. So no matter what I tell you in this video, it's not meant to scare anybody or to tell you that your experience is going to be just like mine, because it just varies from person to person. And anyone who has had children or has especially had multiple children can attest to the fact that, each pregnancy can be completely different. And some people have really positive experiences. Some people have bad experiences, unfortunately. Mine was, it was pretty classic in a lot of ways, and I'll just, kind of get into that. But, there was also, just some of those, like, of course kind of moments. So I'm not going to talk much about my pregnancy experience. If you guys are interested, I'll definitely do another video on that because that's another long story. I'm just going to kind of start from the time that I went into labor with Stella. So she was originally due on February 15th, and that was my original due date the first time that I went to the doctor. When I went back about 4 weeks after that, they put me back to February 22nd, or I guess forward to February 22nd. So I was like, I'm going to be pregnant for longer. And then Stella was not born until February 28th. So from her original due date to the time that I actually gave birth to her, it seemed like I was pregnant forever. So she was just about a week late when I finally ended up giving birth. I was actually due to be induced on March 1st. For those that don't remember, February of 2012 was a leap year. And my biggest fear was that she was going to be born on February 29th. I did not want that to happen, and so I had the induction scheduled for March 1st. I literally didn't think she was going to come. On the evening of February 27th, I woke up out of a dead sleep at 11 o'clock at night. I'd gone to bed about 9 or 9:30. I was just so tired by that point that I was going to bed pretty early at night. And I was awoken with like this horrible like stomach pain, and out of like what seemed like a dead sleep. I hadn't been asleep for that long, only a couple of hours, but I was like in deep sleep. So I just kind of sat up, and Craig was still watching TV at the time, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just don't feel good and my stomach hurts." And he was like, just kind of like jokingly was like, "Maybe you're finally having the baby." And I was like, "No, she's never going to come." Because I literally thought that like Stella was never going to come. February 22nd came and went, and many days after that came and went, and girlfriend was not coming out. Like there was no sign of like any kind of like pre-labor stuff happening. Didn't lose my mucus plug, didn't have any kind of Braxton Hicks, like nothing. Like she just sat there or laid there, lounged there, whatever she was doing in my stomach, but she was not going to come out. So that first pain, I was like, I think I just have an upset stomach, because that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like a bad like period cramp, like a really bad one. And also like, how when you like have food poisoning or like just gut issues, like my stomach started feeling like that, and I was like, oh man. But then it went away. Like it lasted for about 30, 45 seconds, and then it went away, and I was like, okay, good. So I just laid back down and tried to go back to sleep. So it just didn't hit me that I was like going into labor. Like that was like the furthest thing from my mind. So I fell back asleep probably for about like 5-10 minutes maybe, and then it happened again. Sat up and I was like, oh my God, like what the hell? And Craig was like, I seriously think you're in labor. And I was like, no, I'm not. My water didn't break. And like for me, like seeing all the movies and hearing other women talk, like your water breaks and then you have your baby. My water hadn't broken, so I was like, I'm not having a baby. So I laid back down again, and then a couple minutes after I laid down, it happened again. And then I was like, oh yeah, I think I have to go to the bathroom. So I went and I peed, and I lost my mucus plug. So gross TMI, but I looked in the toilet and I was like, what the hell is that? And I was trying to remember back to like all of these videos that I watched on YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's what that is. And then like just like it seemed like one right on top of the other, I started getting like hard contractions. Like at that point on a pain scale of 1 to 10, like the first one that I had was probably about a 6, and then the next one was about 6, almost a 7, and then after that they were like at an 8. Like it was painful, and like I couldn't even talk. And the hospital that I went to required you to call ahead. Now, at this point, it was about like 11:30 in the evening. And so I called them, and, you know, I was like, I think I'm in labor. And like she was talking to me, and I was going through the contractions, and they were so hard and so painful that I was just like cussing on the phone. And she was like, ma'am, you probably want to get to the hospital pretty soon. It sounds like you're in hard labor, and you know, we should probably get you admitted. And I was like, fine, I'll be there as soon as I can. Like I was the pregnant, like, or like, I guess, delivering lady that was like the total bitch. Like I was angry that I was in pain. Like I turned into like the nastiest person that I've ever met. I was like cussing at Craig. I wanted to kick the dog. Like the cat was trying to like, Sophie was like coming and like trying to like snuggle with me, and I was like, get out of my face. Like I didn't want anyone touching me because the pain was so intense. And then I was like, oh crap, I have to take a shower. Cause like in my mind, like if I didn't take a shower, then I wasn't going to get one for like another day or two. And I was like, there's no way I'm not taking a shower for like a day or two. So I get in the shower, and Craig's like, what are you doing? We have to go to the hospital. And I was like, I'm not going without washing my hair. So I'm in the shower, doubled over in pain, trying to wash my hair. I can barely even stand at this point. Like my legs are giving out on me because it just hurt so bad, and I felt so much pressure. And so that shower was, needless to say, pretty quick, but I got, you know, cleaned up, grabbed the bags that I'd packed. I had my bags packed about a week before my actual due date, so they were literally just sitting there. And right before we were getting ready to walk out the door, I was like, hang on, I have to get my makeup. So I'm like sitting here in this spot, this very spot, trying to put on some makeup because I did not want to look like hell when I arrived at the hospital. It was so stupid. When I look back on it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? And I'm like throwing like makeup into like one of my bags, and I'm like, I can't leave without my makeup. Meanwhile, just horrible contractions right on top of the other. Like they're within like a minute or two of each other, and they are like at an 8 and a 9. Like they just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I literally like, I couldn't even get down the stairs. Like Craig had to help me down the stairs because I thought that like I was just going to like fall down them. Like my legs just kept like shaking, and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I give up. I don't know what we're gonna do, but like I'm not doing this. He was like, it's not really an option, get in the car. So he basically like stuffed me into the car, and luckily the hospital is literally like 5 minutes from our house. It was really, really close, and every bump that he hit, I swear I was having contractions like with each bump that he went over, like speed bump or pothole, and I thought he was trying to hit each one on purpose because it just made it so much worse. And so we pull up to the hospital. By this point, I think it's about like 12:15. So things were happening pretty quickly. And he was like, here, get out. I'll bring the bag. I'm going to go park the car. And I was like, get out. Like, where's like my wheelchair? So the hospital that I went to, like, you basically had to like push the little ringer, and then like they buzzed you in, and then you had to walk down this long ass hallway. Nobody came out to greet me with a wheelchair. So I'm walking down this really long hallway having contractions, literally like what seemed like every 30 seconds at this point. And I'm huge, I'm uncomfortable, like to start with, and then there's the pain, and it's just awful. Finally, I get to the end of the hall, and I have to like buzz to get into like the labor and delivery ward. And I walk in, and I have like this awful contraction, and this nurse sees me, and she was like, "Are you Melanie?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I was like, "I want an epidural right now. I'm not doing this. I want some drugs." And she was like, "Okay, honey." She's trying to like placate me, and she's like rubbing my shoulders, and she's like, "Just breathe." And I was like, "Shut the F up. Like, I don't need to breathe. I need my drugs." And she was like, "Well, we need to like take some blood, and I'll try to get you something as soon as possible, but I need to get you weighed. I need to know how much you weigh right now." And I was like, "I'm not getting on the scale. Like, you don't understand. I am in pain. I'm not doing this anymore. Somebody needs to fix it." Like, this is the stuff that's coming out of my mouth. It was like I was the brattiest, like, 5-year-old that was throwing, like, the biggest temper tantrum that you've ever seen in your life. I was so embarrassed, like, looking back on it. Like, I had to apologize to all of the nurses after I finally got my epidural. But it was so painful that, like, I thought I was going to, like, rip this woman's like arms off. Like, I was like grabbing her, and I was like, "You need to fix this." And she was like, "Hang on, let's get you on the scale." And she's like wrestling me onto the scale, and she's like, "You need to hold still." And so she like literally like has her arms around me, and she's like, "Okay, hang on, we'll get this here in just a second." So they didn't even put me in a triage room, which is what they normally do at the hospital that I went to. She just put me into a labor and delivery room right away, and she was like, "Let me check you." And, they put the monitors on me, and she checked me, and at that point, I was already, I think, 5 centimeters dilated. And she was like, "Well, you're definitely, like, you're moving quickly. Like, you're having some pretty hard contractions." And I was like, "No shit, lady." Like, that was like all that I could think. I was like, duh, like, I'm fully aware, fix it. So they gave me something called fentanyl, and so that basically made me feel like I was drunk. Just felt kind of dizzy, but I think it mellowed me out a little bit. Didn't take the pain away at all. Like, it was still awful, but I was so like mellow that I couldn't be quite as aggressive as I was before. And so I think the nurses were like, "Whoo, thank God." So Craig, meanwhile, was like next to me, and I can't even remember at what point he came. I think it was like as the woman was like getting me off of the scale, he had finally like puttered his way up, with like the bags and stuff, and was like, "Hey, how's it going, guys?" And, just being jolly old Craig. So we're in the room, they have all of this stuff on me, and like the woman is trying to find my veins so that she can get my IV going. And, I was like, I want the epidural like right now. Like, I need it right now. I'm gonna flip out if you don't give me the epidural. And so they had actually called the anesthesiologist before they even got me into the room. I think that the nurses were like, "We've got a live one here." Someone needs to sedate her because she's going to wake up like the entire ward. So the anesthesiologist was on the way, and she arrived right as they were trying to get the IV into my hand, and the nurse just couldn't do it. Like, I was just too like frantic. And so the anesthesiologist came over, and she was like, "Here, let me do that." And so she literally just like, she found the vein, stabbed me, taped it, and she was like, "All right, I need you to sit up and I need you to hug this pillow. And even though you're in horrible pain, I need you to hold really still for me. And so she made Craig come around the front of the bed. I had my legs kind of dangling over the side. And at this point, I was like, just stab it in there. Like, I don't care if you miss. Just get the epidural in. As long as I don't feel this pain anymore, I don't care if you damage my nerves. Like, I was kind of at that point, which was like crazy. So, you know, Craig is holding me. I honestly didn't even feel her put the epidural in. When I first got pregnant, that was my biggest fear. Like, besides, you know, the idea of like having to push a baby out of my vagina, my next biggest fear was like the epidural, because I knew that I was going to want one. I knew that long before I even got pregnant, but I was so afraid that, like, you know, she was going to like cause me to go like paralyzed or whatever, but like that didn't happen at all. She was fantastic. She got that thing in there, she turned it on right away, and like the second that the medicine started like pumping into my body, like I felt relief, and that was huge. So at some point, I can't even remember when I did this, but I called my parents. I think it was probably as we were driving to the hospital that I had called my parents, because I wanted my mom in the delivery room with me. So they left right away. My parents live about 2 hours away, and so they packed their bags and drove down. And my dad dropped my mom off at the hospital, and I think they were there probably by like 4 in the morning. They had arrived. So my dad dropped my mom off at the hospital, and then he went to our house here and he let Mr. Kong out and fed him breakfast, and then he came to the hospital. So by 6 in the morning, I was fully dilated. So I was at a 10, and so that only took a few hours for everything to kind of progress really quickly. The epidural didn't slow my labor down in any kind of way, and I had so many people telling me, like, if you get an epidural, like, it's going to slow down your labor, and that was absolutely not the case. I progressed very quickly, and you know, I felt like no pain with the epidural in terms of like the contractions. I felt like a tightening in my stomach with each contraction, but it wasn't painful. It's kind of uncomfortable, but bearable. And so by 6 in the morning, I was fully dilated, and the problem was that my water still hadn't broken and Stella still hadn't dropped. And so the doctor that was on call at the time was like, I can go ahead and I can break your water, or we can try to let it break naturally still. I can try putting you in some different positions. And I was like, that just kind of freaks me out, like breaking my water. So I was like, why don't we try putting me in some different positions, and you know, we'll see what happens there. So she started like flipping me like a pancake from side to side, like every like half hour, and you know, was basically like kind of pushing on my stomach, and you know, like she was checking periodically, and like my water still was not breaking, and still Stella had not dropped at that point. So by 11:15, so I had gone like that entire morning like being flip-flopped like a pancake. She came back in and she was like, okay, look, I really don't think that your water is going to break naturally. I need to break your water. You got to have this baby at some point, and I want you to have it before the epidural wears off. And that at that point, I was like, holy crap, yeah, let's do this. Like, that put the fear of God in me. Like, that epidural wearing off, I was like, F that. There's no way that's happening. Like, get her out now. So she broke my water, and instantly it was like this rush of water, and like Stella dropped at that point, and her head was like right there. And I suddenly felt like an enormous amount of pressure and like this need to push. So even though I had the epidural, I still had enough feeling to know that like this baby is coming out at this point. And so she was like, all right, we're going to do a practice push, and then you're going to push this baby out, and this should go really quickly. So I was like, fantastic. I'm going to meet my baby in like 5 minutes. So she had me do a practice push, and I pushed really well. But I swear that Stella was in there like hanging on for dear life. Because every time that I pushed and got her out a little way, the doctor was like, oh, she's going back up. And I was like, no, she's not. She needs to get out. So, she kept having me push, and I would push and push and push, and I was pushing so hard. Like, it was such hard work. And I pushed for quite a while. So I started pushing at like, what, 11:15? She was born at 1:16. So I pushed from 11:15 to 1:16. It took me forever to push this baby out. Like, she just was not wanting to come out. And here's the part where I'm probably going to get all teary-eyed, and I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to, like, just make it through this without crying. So I push, and, you know, they keep telling me at this point, just one more push, we swear, like, this should be it, she'll be out after this. And they said that to me so many times, like, I was kind of starting to cuss at people again. It's like, F you guys, you're all a bunch of liars. Like, you told me that this was going to take 5 minutes, and I've been pushing for a really long time, and I kept watching the clock, and I was like, an hour went by, another hour went by. Like, it just seemed like it was never going to happen. So the doctor was like, okay, look, I know you're frustrated. Just please give me one last push, and I promise you she will be out this time. And I was like, you swear that she'll be out? And she said, yes, absolutely. So I literally pushed. And meanwhile, so my mom is in the delivery room with me, and Craig is in the delivery room with me. So I have both of them on either side. Craig is being pretty quiet. I think that he's kind of like a little bit overwhelmed at this point, but I really wasn't too worried about him. You know, my mom was fantastic. I loved having her there. She was so soothing. She was so encouraging, and Craig was too, but I think he was just really like overwhelmed. He kind of had like that oh shit look on his face. And so I really didn't want to ask too much of him. I really relied on my mom to like give me like the real encouragement that I needed, and she did fantastic. And so I gave that one last push, and all of a sudden I just felt like this huge relief. And I forgot to mention that right as I started pushing, they asked me if I wanted a mirror to be able to see, and I refused that mirror at first, but then after I'd been pushing for an hour, Stella's head was visible at that point, and so she had me feel her head down there. And at that point I was like, oh, here come the waterworks, now it's going to start. At that point I was like, yeah, I want to be able to see this. So they brought the mirror in sort of halfway through the pushing, and it was so amazing, like being able to see her there. And so I gave that one last push, I felt that relief, and I saw her just kind of like come tumbling out. Like, it was so funny because I kind of wanted to laugh a little bit because she just like flopped out. I think I just like pushed so hard that she just kind of like shot out, because I was like, I'm done pushing, like this is the last that I can give, and she just sort of like shot out. And I just like, I saw her and I was like, oh my god, that's her. And I just, it's like the most incredible moment that like you could ever imagine. Like, those of you that have had kids, like, you know what that moment is like, that first time that you see them. It's like nothing that I can explain. And they immediately put her on my chest. They didn't clean her up or anything. They just gave her to me right away, and they were kind of cleaning her up a little bit as she was on my chest. And like, I look up at Craig, and like, he's got tears in his eyes, and my mom's crying. And she just, you know, she didn't cry when she first came out. They got a little squawk out of her, and then, you know, they immediately put her on my chest. But she just didn't cry. She was just so calm. And she just seemed so pleasant. Like, that was the first thing that went through my mind, is I was thinking, like, she's so nice. Like, she's just so sweet and calm. And, you know, she opened her eyes a little bit, and she looked at me, and I just, oh my gosh, like, I just lost it at that point. And I was just, you know, like, tears were coming down. And, you know, the second that I saw her, I had Stella's name picked out before she was even born, and when she was inside of me, it just seemed like such a perfect name. And when I saw her, like, I just knew. I was like, this is the perfect name for you. You know, she just, I could already tell that she was kind of sassy and just, I don't know, I looked into her eyes and I just felt like I just knew who she was instantly. And I wanted to breastfeed her, and so they, you know, tried getting her to latch on right away, and they hadn't even taken her away from me at this point. She was still, you know, in my arms. She hadn't been completely cleaned up yet, and they put her on my boob, and she had trouble kind of latching on at first, and that was something we struggled with for a while. But, you know, they got her on there, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is like my person. And so they let me have her for like a good hour, and my mom is just like, you know, she's crying, and she's looking at her and touching her, and Craig is just like so amazed by her. And so they finally take her away to get her all cleaned up, and Craig goes with her, and he's taking pictures, and she's not crying at all. She's just so calm, and she looks just so sweet, and she was so fat. Like, she was 21.5 inches, and she was 8 pounds 1 ounce, but she just looked like this plump, happy baby. Her face wasn't squishy. She just seemed so perfect, you know? And during all of this, like while they were trying to get her to breastfeed, I was also like, you know, they were getting the placenta out and stitching me up. I did have a tear. It was kind of on the inside, and I think it was a 2nd-degree tear. I also had some other issues. I won't get into all that stuff, but I had kind of a rough recovery because of like how hard I pushed. I definitely caused some damage, and my recovery period after giving birth was lengthy. It took me a while to kind of get over that, but you know, they got her all cleaned up, they washed her hair, and they gave her back to me, and I just held her for like the longest time. She was on my chest, and I just fell so in love with her. Like, she just smelled amazing, and I just knew that she was mine, and it was just the most amazing moment, and I just felt so happy. She was absolutely worth like every single second of that pain. It was an amazing experience. So I didn't have any major complications other than that. Like, I just went from like having like no labor at all to like super hard labor, and they said that that's pretty rare. Most people sort of like ease into it. Mine just like started at nothing and went to 10 within like 20 minutes. So when she wanted to come, she really wanted to come. So yeah, my experience with the hospital was really good. Everybody was wonderful. She did poop while she was in utero, and so there were actually a bunch of extra doctors on hand that checked her out just to make sure that she was okay, and we were going to have to stay an extra 2 nights at the hospital because I tested positive for group B strep, and so they had to monitor both of us, and so I had to stay in the hospital, I think, for a total of 3 days. And they moved us up to a postpartum room, and the rooms were really nice. They were really big, and about, I would say, 3 hours after giving birth, they moved us both up there, and we got settled, and people started coming and visiting, and everybody just fell in love with Stella right away. Everybody that saw her was like, oh, she's so perfect. Like, she just looked like the perfect little baby. All right, so the camera totally cut me off because I was talking forever. I don't know how to condense stories. I don't know if anybody else has that problem. That's just not a skill that I have. So anyway, I think where I left off was saying that everybody that came to visit was just so like impressed with how like content Stella was. Like, she wasn't colicky. She didn't, like, she just never really cried. She really was an amazing, like, newborn. You know, she started sleeping through the night when she was about 3 weeks old, which was really surprising to me because she was a breastfed baby, and the doctors had told me that she would probably actually wake more frequently because I was breastfeeding. So to kind of expect that, but you know, she started sleeping 7 hours a night at 3 weeks old, and by like 4 and 5 weeks, she was sleeping like 10 hours a night. So I don't know what I did to get so blessed with like a sleeping baby, but girlfriend loves to nap and she loves to sleep. In fact, so her second birthday is this Friday. I can count the number of times that she has woken up during the middle of the night since she was about 4 weeks old, like on one hand. Like it has literally only been a handful of times. So she's super amazing sleeper. She's just been a very content, very happy baby just from the very beginning. And we just were so lucky and so blessed with how like perfect she just turned out. I really don't think that I could have like asked for a better child. She has changed my life in so many positive ways. Like she is more work than I ever thought a baby human would be, but she's so worth it, and she's so funny and so sweet and charming, and there's just like nothing that I don't adore about this little girl. Like, you know, like people sometimes like ask me if I ever have any regrets about you know, not having more kids, and absolutely not. Like, because she is all that I could have like ever wanted in a child. And you know, sometimes I do feel bad that she'll never have a sibling, but she has lots of friends that she can play with, and she you know, she has cousins that adore her, and she's gonna go to school. She's gonna have lots and lots of other kids around her. So you know, I don't ever think that she'll be lonely, and she's very bright, very smart, and I just, like, it's amazing because I could see all of those things in her, like, from the moment that I laid eyes on her. Like, I knew who she was as a person, and I know she's going to do amazing things in life. And I don't want to cry again, but it's been an incredible journey so far, and I can't believe she's going to be 2 already. Freaks me out to think that, like, 2 years have just flown by so quickly, but she's an amazing person. I wouldn't trade anything about her for any amount of money. There's just nothing that I would ever want to change about her. She's wonderful. And Stella, if you're watching this as like a big girl one day, your dad and I just love you so much. You just mean the world to us, and we're so thankful for you. So, I think I mentioned everything. I'm trying to go back to see if there's like any funny little parts that I forgot. It just all happened so quickly. The main thing, I guess the main funny thing is that like I just was so insanely thirsty when I was in labor with her that like I would try to melt the ice chips that the nurses gave me. When you have an epidural, you're not allowed to drink or eat anything. I don't know if that is the case for doing a natural birth. I mean, they probably don't let you order a steak or anything, but I was not allowed to have any water whatsoever. They gave me ice chips, and I was like melting the ice chips and then drinking like the little bit of water, and they caught on after giving me a few like cups of ice chips. The nurses was like, they were literally like, "You're melting the ice chips, aren't you?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And they were like, "No, you are. Like, we just saw you doing that." So I was like literally like blowing like hot air onto them, like from my mouth, like trying to melt the ice chips. And then right after I gave birth, they let me place a room service order. And I literally ordered like 5 things from the menu. I ordered cake, I ordered a grilled cheese sandwich, I ordered soup, I ordered a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I ordered like a giant salad. And then I literally ordered like a gallon of like, what did it was cranberry juice. All I wanted was cranberry juice, and I sucked down that cranberry juice like it was going out of style. So, but yeah, that was, I guess that was one kind of funny thing that I forgot, like right after I gave birth, because the woman that brought me the food, I just remember her looking at me and going, is this all for you? And I was like, give me the food. And I just like started shoveling it in my mouth. I was so hungry. I must have burned like 5,000 calories, like just pushing her out. Like I just remember like feeling like I just had the biggest workout of my life, and all I wanted to do was like eat everything in sight. And I kind of did that like for the first few days after giving birth. I was just like, I just could not get enough food. So anyway, if you guys are all interested in hearing about my pregnancy, I'm sure that will be another long video. There was a lot of hilarious things that happened during my pregnancy. And then, you know, my breastfeeding story. I was really successful at breastfeeding. I felt so lucky to be so good at it. You know, let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in those videos at all. But thank you guys so much for listening to this. I know it's like a crazy long video. If anybody is still listening at this point, high five. But like I said, this is mostly just for Stella to be able to look back on one day. And I just didn't want to forget like any of like the major details of how this all happened, because it's been 2 years now almost. And like the memories kind of start to fade just a little bit. And that makes me sad because I don't ever want to like forget all of these little things that happened, because it was an awesome experience. It was scary, it was amazing, it was like life-changing, it was so many things that I just can't even really put into words. But all I know is that like I have the best little person that I could have ever asked for, and she's amazing. So anyway, thank you guys for sharing in this story with me, and yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.